Chinese spies could be using the southern border to get into the U.S., top Republican warned. Now, Green said that there has been a massive increase of Chinese nationals tied to the People's Liberation Army that have gained access to the U.S. by crossing over, of course, the wide open U.S. southern border. According to Green, there have been close to 18,000 Chinese nationals released into the U.S. this year alone. He called it the stupidity of the Biden administration's border policies currently in place. He called them mind-blowing because now Chinese spies could act as saboteurs in the same manner Russian military men established residency in Ukraine before the invasion. So he plans to direct his committee to hold hearings in the future on the threat of Chinese infiltrators using the southern border. Extremely disturbing and sad, the fact that we knew this was coming from the Biden administration. Joining me now, Tera Dahl with us, Real America's Voice contributor. Tera, look, if it's not Chinese spy balloons, if it's not Confucius Institutes, now we've got this going on. Tell me a little bit more about the scope of this, because this is not just a national security issue. It's more. It feels like it's even bigger than that because it's coming from all different areas, not just the southern border, but all across the country in different venues, if you will.
Yeah. Good morning, David. It's good to be with you.
Good morning.
And experts are warning that we need to be prepared for war here on our homeland. And as you mentioned, they're saying that that Chinese President Xi Jinping is using the same template that Putin used before the invasion in Ukraine. Remember the intel reports that came out in January 2022, stating that Russia was sending in these operators into Ukraine, acting as saboteurs prior to the invasion, then in February 2022. And they're saying that China is doing the same thing here, sending in these saboteurs coming from the PLA, members of the PLA, into the United States. And experts are saying that they believe that they're coming from a specific unit that are tied to the PLA because they have the same haircuts, they have the same tattoos, they have the same clothing, and they have the same rituals. And so they're saying they believe that they potentially could be coming from the same unit. And what these experts are warning is that they can conduct then attacks when China is going to invade Taiwan. Those saboteurs here in the United States will attack at our military bases, at reservoirs, and at shopping centers.
Yeah, see, I was going to bring up Taiwan because that's where this seems to all be leading. I mean, China's not stupid. This just in. And now we even saw that some of those Chinese nationals were arrested next to U.S. military bases as scuba divers. So clearly we are seeing some of their methods in operation here. But it's the Darien Gap, that Camp Darien Gap area between Colombia and Panama that connects both countries. That seems to be a real haven for all of this. We've reported on this before. I know Ben Berquam has done some great work down there, but it seems like Chinese nationals are going into that specific area on purpose. And that, the way I understand it, I'm looking at the stats, 500,000 are expected. 500,000 illegal immigrants expected to cross over into in that area compared to 250,000 last year. So this is a major problem and a major area that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the route that these Chinese nationals are taking is that they fly into Ecuador. And that is because China and Ecuador have an agreement they have for many years. China has given Ecuador billions of dollars in loans and credits. So basically, Ecuador becomes then indebted to China. They are the second largest trading partner with Ecuador. So Chinese nationals do not need a visa. So they fly into Ecuador and then they travel through the Darien Gap. And there's a camp there in the San Vicente in the southern part of Panama, which is right by the Darien Gap. And that is where the 95% of the Chinese that are traveling into the United States through the southern border, they're staying at this camp. And the kicker, Dave, is there's footage that you're showing. This is from Michael Young. He has been, he's down there right now in the Darien Gap, and he took this video of that camp specifically. He calls it the China camp, which is because he says that 95% of the Chinese nationals who are crossing into the United States are staying at that camp specifically. And what is so appalling is that the United States taxpayers are funding these migrant camps all throughout the Darien Gap to expand Safeway passages for these migrants. So instead of deterring, so we know that these Chinese nationals are staying at that camp. And through the UN Refugee Agency, we're funding it. Through the IOM, The U.S. taxpayers are funding it. So that's where our taxpayer dollars are going to allow more migrants then. That's their plan. That's the plan of the Biden administration, is to expand these these passages. So that we know that. So instead of deterring these Chinese from coming in, we are allowing them to come up through the southwest border. And we know that over 150 people that have or terrorists that have been on the terrorist watch list have been apprehended at the southwest border. And it doesn't include the 1.7 million known gotaways. So we don't know where these Chinese nationals are.